Hi, and welcome to the Ready for Love series. I'm Iris Benrubi, your host, and I'm really excited to have a returning guest. I've got Dr. Margaret Paul. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm excited to spend this time with you.
Well, I'm thrilled because you're going to talk to us about loving yourself, the key to creating a healthy relationship.
Right.
So let's start with why. What had you pick this topic? Why is this important?
Well, I work a lot with relationships, and the main issue that causes relationship problems is what's called self-abandonment, where people are not loving themselves. They're making the other person responsible for loving them. And then as soon as we do that, as soon as we hand that responsibility to the other person, then we have to try and control them, which we do in a lot of ways. We get angry, we give ourselves up, we withdraw, we resist, we shut down. So many things that destroy relationships. And so it's so vitally important that people learn to love themselves. When they learn to love themselves, then they get all filled up with love inside, and then they have love to share with their partner. And it's relationships are so completely different when our intention is to get love as opposed to being able to share love. I mean, that's the greatest experience in life. And people often confuse the joy of getting love, which doesn't hold a candle to sharing love. But we can't share love if we don't have love to share, and we don't have love to share if we're not loving ourselves.
Yeah, and I really like that because what it talks to is when we're trying to get love from someone else, it's not in our control. We're always trying to do something to get what we need and hang on to it so that we don't lose it. And it
Right.
really puts us in a place that's very powerless and at the mercy of someone else.
That's right. That's right. We're victims.
Yeah, and what you're inviting our viewers to look at is how do I get that power back in the area that I can control, which is how to love myself and not abandon myself.
Right.
All
Yeah.
right, great. So you're working with someone, it's clear that they self-abandon, they don't know how to love themselves. What's the first step?
Well, I'll go through the steps of inner bonding, which is what I teach people to do. So the first step, I would say to them, take some deep breaths and use your breath to get you inside your body with your feelings, because what most people have learned to do is to avoid their feelings. They avoid their feelings with various addictions, shoving it down with food or drugs or alcohol or television or sex or pornography or spending or, tons of ways, video games and the internet. And so they avoid their feelings, which is abandoning themselves. Like if you had a child who was upset and you avoided the child would feel neglected, alone, and abandoned. That's what happens on the inner level. So the first thing we need to do is get out of our head and into our body. And that's step one of inner bonding, getting inside your body. And then tuning into physical sensations, because feelings often show up physically as tension or tightness or fluttering or emptiness inside the body. And so we want to get present and we want to make a decision that we want responsibility. So that's the first thing. I would say, take a deep breath. What's happening in your body? And are you willing to take responsibility for that? And then the second step would be, okay, now breathe in your heart and open to learning, because in inner bonding, your intention is either to protect against your feelings, against pain, which is what we've all learned to do, or to learn about what your feelings are telling you. All of our feelings have vital information for us. They're telling us whether we're loving ourselves or abandoning ourselves, whether we're lying to ourselves or telling us the truth. They're telling us what's happening with other people or situations. So they're an inner source of guidance and a roadmap. So we want to open to learning. And inner bonding, either we're trying to control and protect and avoid, or we're open to learning about what's loving to us. So in step two, we open to learning about what's loving to us. And I teach people how to open to a higher source, their higher self, their older, wiser self, a source of love and wisdom and vital information. So that's what I would do, is help them open to that. And then in step three, I would help them go inside and say, well, ask, what am I telling you that's perhaps making you feel anxious or depressed or angry or guilty or shamed or empty or any of these very difficult feelings that people feel? And we start to tune into how we're treating ourselves Maybe I'm telling myself I'm not good enough, or I'll never be enough, or I have to be perfect, or I can't make mistakes, or I better not fail, or I got to do everything right, or we're just acting like our feelings don't exist. There's all kinds of ways that we're treating ourselves. So here's where we begin to understand how we're treating ourselves. And then I help people go a little deeper as to why, because there's false beliefs there. There's a lot of false beliefs about being able to control, about not being able to handle our feelings, about why and so it's so important to get love rather than be loving, or false beliefs about what a higher power is. There's so many false beliefs. And of course, this is a process that takes practice. And then in step 4, we would go to our higher guidance and ask what's true and what's loving. And then we take loving action. Like if we find out that we're judging ourselves harshly and we're telling ourselves we're not good enough, of course, that's going to make us feel terrible. So then we would have to start to tune in to how that makes us feel. We start to tune in to noticing our self-judgments and noticing how we can treat ourselves that make ourselves feel safe inside. And once we do that, then we check in and see how we're feeling as a result of that. So that's a very brief overview of the 6 steps of inner bonding.
All right, so I'm going to play devil's advocate here. So let's say
Yeah.
one of our viewers has been through a breakup and she's heartbroken, or her partner abused her or betrayed her. And that emotion is so big that in step 1 to connect to her body, or step 2 to take responsibility, it's like, no, I don't want to go there. It's too big. I don't want to feel that. I would be involved in my children's lives. I'd rather go shopping. I would rather play video games. How would you help that woman go through the steps when she's resisting feeling those big feelings?
Well, the reason she's resisting them is because she doesn't know how to handle them. So with something like heartbreak, see, there's 2 kinds of feelings. There's what we call the wounded feelings, which are the ones we cause with our self-abandonment. And then there's the existential pain of life, the loneliness, the grief, the heartbreak, the helplessness over others and over events and outcomes. So if somebody hurt her like that and there's a breakup, she's going to feel heartbroken. She's going to feel grief. She's going to feel helpless over that person. So here's what I would do to help her with that. I would say, put your hands on your heart, which stimulates oxytocin, the feel-good hormone, and breathe in and get present with the feeling. Don't move away from it. You need to open to this feeling, embrace it, welcome it, and be present with it with compassion. And so I would say, open and bring in compassion. Put your hands on your heart and get present. And here's what I would help her learn to do. This is what I do when I'm feeling those very painful feelings. I would say to that feeling, which is, that's our inner child, that's our soul who's feeling these feelings. And I would be saying, honey, I am right here with you. I am not going to leave you alone with these feelings. It's too painful to be alone. So I'm here, and if we need other people to help us, I'll reach out to them to get held, to get nurtured. But I'm here, and I'm going to stay with you. I'm not going to leave you. And Spirit's here. Our higher guidance is here, bringing love into our heart. And I'm going to stay with you. I'm going to nurture you. I understand why you're feeling this way. And I would keep doing this until I feel like the feeling is ready to be released. And it doesn't actually take that long. And when I can feel that, I'm going to say, well, I release this pain to Spirit. And I ask for peace and acceptance in return. And you'd be surprised at what happens when we do that for ourselves. And it may come up over and over again, but each time it comes up, we need to show up for it, because if we avoid it, it doesn't go away. It doesn't help to act out addictively. It's like it festers in there and it grows bigger and it hurts more because we're abandoning ourselves. And so it's actually a simple process of showing up with compassion for ourselves.
You know, every time that you talked about putting your hands on your heart, I didn't even do it, but I could feel myself just take a breath and just allow everything to relax, and even felt tears coming up to my eyes. It's such a connecting experience that often in the world that we live in right now, that is fast, fast, do everything, get things done, that we don't have a lot of time to connect with ourselves.
Well, that's not actually true. People think they don't have time, but you know what they're generally doing anyway is that chatter, that monkey mind is going on and on and on. That's what we call the ego wound itself, and it's chattering away about all kinds of things, and that is not helping us to be connected. It's very disconnecting. We can take the same amount of time that we take chattering away in our mind to get present in our body and to connect with our feelings. It really doesn't take very long. It's like if a child comes in crying because it skinned its knee, say there's a little girl skinned her knee, and you pick her up and you hold her and say, oh, honey, I know that hurts. I'm going to kiss it and make it better. It takes like 5 minutes and the child's off running and playing again because that child has gotten what she needed. We can do that.
Yeah,
It doesn't take long.
I love that you caught me in one of those lies we tell ourselves, I don't have time. And it's clear that if a family member had an emergency, I would find the time for that.
That's right.
And so
That's
you're
right.
inviting us to really challenge those automatic thoughts. Is it true, or can I make this a priority, which is what you're inviting us to do?
Yes, and see, I see it like if somebody has a baby and they want to be a very good parent, they're tuning in. You know, if the baby's sleeping, they have a baby monitor on. And I call it having your inner baby monitor on. You learn to stay present in your body and you learn to stay tuned in so that as soon as there is anything other than peace and other than fullness inside, you're attending to that. And so it doesn't take a lot of time. People think it does, but it doesn't.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I babysit my granddaughter who's just under 2 years old when she's having a nap, and I'm always checking in on that baby monitor. Is she up yet? Is she moving yet? And it's something that we need to start to apply to ourselves, that we're just as important as a baby. And at some levels we are a baby, that inner child.
Right, that's right. And exactly like you do with your granddaughter. That's what we want to do with ourselves. We want to stay that tuned in so that the minute your granddaughter cries, you pick her up. You want to help her, you want to feed her or change her or rock her or do whatever it is she needs. And she can't tell you all the time. She's 2. She can't always tell you what she needs, but you're tuning in to what she needs intuitively. And that's what we do on the inner level. We show up exactly the same way. And when we do that, we are loving ourselves. We get filled up with love. We're not handing that 2-year-old, like with your granddaughter, when she wakes up and she's hungry, you don't go knocking around doors in the neighborhood trying to get somebody else to feed her, right? You take care of her. Well, what happens with so many people in relationships is they keep giving that inner child away to somebody else. Here, you approve of her. You pay attention to her. You value her. You give her the love she needs. You give her the attention she needs. All of that is self-abandoning. And then we have to try and control that person to give us that.
Yeah, and what?
So that inner child feels completely unworthy inside because we're rejecting ourselves.
And for my own self, I know how many times I can even be aware of what's going on, but I still push through to get done what I said I was going to get done instead of attending to that internal baby monitor.
Yeah, but you know what? It doesn't have to be either or. Like I'm right here with you right now, and I'm connecting with you and hearing you and responding to you, but I'm also present in my body because these feelings have a lot of information for me. So I don't want to ignore what's going on in my body. In fact, this is how I work with my clients. I stay very connected to my feelings. I stay very connected to my higher guidance, which allows me to connect to them, their feelings and their guidance. It's not an either or. It's like, again, like you're with your granddaughter and maybe you're holding her, and maybe you're talking to a friend and you're with the friend, but you're tuning into her too.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about the ways in which we try to control others when we self-abandon.
Okay, well, we've got a lot of ways. I mean, people use they use anger, they use blame, they use all kinds of forms of attack. They use giving themselves up, like people pleasing. I'll do what you want, so that then you'll do what I want. Which is, people think that if they're giving themselves up and they're being martyrs, they're being so loving, they're taking care of other people. But that's a form of self-abandonment. It's actually a form of control. And then people don't like to be controlled. And so then they'll try and control not being controlled by shutting down and withdrawing and resisting. And so there's so many different ways that people can overtly or subtly, even like telling somebody your feelings. We've been taught, well, share your feelings. But again, it depends upon your intention. I can say to you, for example, I'm really hurt by what you said to me. Now, if I do that, I'm basically making you responsible. It's a form of attack and blame. Whereas if I say, I'm really hurt by what you said to me, but there must be a good reason you said it. And I'd like to understand what was going on. What was I doing? What were you doing? There must be a good reason this is happening. Now I'm open to learning. I'm no longer blaming. But just telling somebody your feelings without a desire to learn becomes a form of control, a form of blame.
All right, and I want to go back to something you said earlier. There's a difference between a love where you're trying to get and a love that you share. Could you expand on that and maybe give some examples on how they're different?
Well, see, most of us have been brought up to think that the best feeling we can get is somebody else giving us attention, approving of us, loving us. They think that's the best thing. But that's an addiction. It feels good for the moment, but like any addiction, feels good for the moment, but then you need more of it, and you need more of it, and you need more of it, and you keep on trying to have control and doing everything right or getting mad or whatever. Whereas when you're loving yourself, see, spirit is love. We live in the energy of love. And when we're open to learning about loving ourselves, we can feel that love coming inside, filling our heart, filling our soul to overflowing. And then we have such a deep desire to share that love. And when we're with people who are also loving themselves, that's truly the greatest experience in life. That's when we can connect. That's when we're sharing our love with them. They're sharing their love with us. We have a circle of love. It's not like we're giving something to get something back. We're sharing our love as a free gift. Nothing's attached to it. We have no expectation. We're just sharing our love because it feels so good to do that. Mm-hmm. And when the other person is doing that as well, wow, that's really the very best feeling in the world. That getting of love and trying to control that just doesn't come close to the experience of sharing love.
Beautiful. So I think this is a great segue. You've got a free gift for our viewers. Could you share that?
Yes, it's a little ebook that I channel down from my higher guidance. How can I heal so that I can love? And it does go through the 6 steps of inner bonding. And so I hope that your listeners download that and read it. It's not a big book, but it's really helpful.
Yeah, right here, right below the video is a link to Dr. Paul's free gift. So make sure you take advantage of that. And Margaret, if there was one thing you would hope our viewers take away from today, what would that be?
Well, it would be to recognize how important it is to learn to love yourself. Most people, they know it intellectually, but they don't really get how vital it is. And it's not just like having a hot bath or getting your nails done. It's really learning to attend to your feelings and take responsibility for them. So that's what I hope people get.
And with that, I want to say thank you for the time that you've shared with us, all of this wisdom, and for the difference you make in the world.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on. It's nice to see you again, Iris.
Yes, nice to have you on as usual.